Okay, call to order. This is a Safety and Security Subcommittee meeting on January 29th. Before we start, can we have a pledge of allegiance to the flag?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before we start, I want to acknowledge Chief Dave Callahan and Acting Fire Chief James Cullen. Thank you for coming. Before we start, I'd just like to say 2024 was very challenging for us. The school committee was relatively very new. 4 of us just come on. And Miss Ellis and Mr. Kingston was in their second term. So 6 out of 7 people were relatively new. We had 5 union contracts, we had school violence, and we lost Tony Matera. And one of the biggest issues that came before us was, when we were campaigning, was student safety. And then when we were appointed onto the board, you know, and the 3 of us are working together for the first time, we were in full agreement that we needed to start enforcing our discipline policies, and I think that's what we did. And then from there, we added a 4th SRO, and we have a security consultant now that's going to be starting soon. And even though I think we're going in the right direction, I think we still have a lot more work we need to do. And from there, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kelly and Chris Bowen, and then it's from what happened 25, the beginning to the end, and where we are, you know, going on to 24, and then what we're going on to 25.
Great, thanks. I want to start by saying what incredible partners we've had in the Revere Police Department, the Revere Fire Department. I know Mr. Caggiano alluded to that, but truly our ability to just pick up the phone and talk to these folks and say, this is our issue, can you help us? They're here in a moment's notice, whether it's training of staff and students or training of our security personnel or adding an SRO, as you spoke of. It's just incredible that we have such great partnerships and are able to rely heavily on the other city agencies to help us make sure these schools are safe. So very thankful for that. I asked Mr. Bowen to put together some data so we could look at the disciplinary issues and incidents that have happened at the beginning of the year when we had a lot of problems and where we are now. And hopefully that data will drive our discussion about what our next steps are going to be. And then after we take a look at the data, which Mr. Bowen will take us through, I wanted to share the information from Guidepost, which is a new partner we have working with us on safety and security throughout the district, and just talk a little bit about the actions they're going to take in the coming months. And then we can talk about which of the measures we've had in place from the beginning of this year we may want to roll back or continue. We can have that conversation at the end, if that sounds okay with everybody. So Chris, do you want to take us through this data that you just shared with us?
Sure. So I basically pulled 3 pieces of information. The first table shows discipline that we report for DESE on a yearly basis over the past 3 school years. So that kind of is broken down in terms of out-of-school suspensions, expulsions, which is a removal for more than 90 days, emergency removals, and so forth. You'll note, I just want to point out that some of these numbers are double counted because students they counted to multiple categories. The second category, the second table, I zoomed in.
Well, do you want to just talk about that data for a minute?
Sure, yeah. So the point I'd like to highlight from this data is that we are only halfway through the school year this year. And we are, even if we were to, double that number in each of these categories, we are well below where we were at the end of the school year in the past 2. And I think that goes to show, even if you look down at the next table, I tried to break down the beginning of the school year where we had, there were the 17 students that were involved in the start of school challenges that we had. I kind of closed out September with some additional unrelated challenges that we had. And then the rest is number of students who were, disciplined in some way out of school from October through where we are today. You'll notice that there's sort of the numbers, these are numbers of students that had been impacted versus number of instances of removal from school. So those numbers, they don't quite match up because we're talking number of students down here, we're talking number of instances up top, and those are a little different. But the point I think I just want to make is that where we are right now is we are definitely on track to not be where we were in terms of student discipline by the end of this school year compared to the previous two. And I think that's because of the response that we had at the beginning of the school year and the tone that was set.
Chris, quick question. Are all of these, are there any instances that are not reported to DESE and not reflected in this chart?
So a student being removed from a classroom because they refuse to give the cell phone up to the teacher and the kind of non-exclusionary discipline that we do as a school, all of that's on the back of the table. I shouldn't say all of that, some of this is on the back of the paper. So we, for example, if we have a conflict between two students that's a verbal altercation that doesn't require students being removed from school, and we mediate that situation, which is a lot of the work that our restorative practices interventionists do. We've had year to date 134 different sessions for different lengths of time. That is not reported to DESE because that's not exclusionary discipline.
I get it.
That's alternative to suspension, which is what the law requires us to do before considering suspension,
Got
right? So I think the point I'd like to make is that our exclusionary discipline, so removing from school, suspensions, so forth, is down. Our alternatives to suspension is up, and the climate of the building is very different than it was at the beginning of the school year and at the end of last year. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
To me, it's just that we are just over the halfway point in the year, right? The semester just started last week. And I think we are well beyond, or well on track to not end up where we were in total numbers for the past 2 years.
Just in general, how is the tone? I mean, compared to what it was last year? Because when 2024 was there was a lot of violence
Yeah,
going on.
I think because of some of the situations that we are not dealing with in school currently, I would say that some of the more of the attention is going to what is typical high school behaviors, right? We're always going to have
Which is natural.
conflict, we're gonna have kids that are mad about something, we're gonna and we are spending a lot more time on that and peaceably resolving that with the staff that we have to work with students who are not having the best day, right?
Okay.
And I think that it's been, to me, it's been a different feel.
Thank you.
We have, I know Dr. Galucci sent out the MCIEA data, the survey for students and for staff. Last week.
Mhm.
Do you have a plan in place for when and how that's gonna be administered?
Yeah, we start that in advisory next week,
Okay,
and we kind of follow up with students who aren't there for the week leading up to
Okay.
break.
so that will be telling, because it asks the kids about the climate of the school. And it asks, the teachers do a separate survey, so both teachers and kids will be able to talk about how they feel the climate and the vibe in the school is, and whether or not they feel safe, included. In all of those pieces, so I think that data will tell us a lot when we compare it to last year's data.
I scanned that survey. I don't remember if it had questions as far as like what makes students feel safe. Does it ask them like what makes them feel safe? As opposed to just generally, what do they feel
It
safe?
asks the whole range of questions in terms of in terms of how they feel safe, sort of like sharing about themselves in class, about how they feel
Okay.
welcomed in different, safety kind of broadly understood.
But
just
not
physical safety.
open-ended questions.
There is an open response piece for
Okay.
parts of it. I'd have to go back and look at last year's to see.
Yeah,
what
no
was open
worries.
response in, but it's a quite comprehensive survey.
Okay.
And you'll be sharing all that data with
Mhm.
us, okay?
So, Chris, overall,
Mhm.
you're thinking that the climate has improved and discipline issues have gone down. Is that a good summary?
That is a great summary
Okay.
that I'm here to share.
So do you guys feel in the same way?
Yes, that's what I was gonna ask.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
Either chief, any commentary?
Yeah, I would say that, just some of the measures that were taken, that have been taken in the beginning of the school year, like you just mentioned, dramatically changed the school environment and calm things down. With the action that the school took by removing certain students. And as well with other students that were taken to court, had court actions against them for their, behavior. Those two efforts between the police and the school department also help with the juvenile court and the court doing their intervention made a huge difference. And I mean, I can see it just from some of our number and our data, just like Officer Singer said, Sergeant Nicola, we can see that the numbers have dropped. We're not having, I don't see the problems that we were having in the beginning of the school year. So, and I think a lot of that is just the good collaborative relationship that the school department has with the police department as well as the fire department. Everyone gets along, and I mean, I was connected with the schools 30 years ago in the 90s. Even then, with past superintendents, there was always a good relationship and good communication, and that has continued to this day now. And that is something that makes a huge difference and can be very impactful in a positive light for everyone else in the school. So in the SROs, with the police department's going to continue to be committed. With the SROs assigned to the schools, we've added one more officer to help here at the high school. And we have the behavioral health unit as well if we need to have them come and help, but now they've kind of been returned to their duties. And I think we can maybe even adjust some of the stuff with the SROs that are working here and spend a lot of time at the high school. Of course, after we have a conversation, maybe we can just move things around a little bit, but it's definitely much better than it was.
How's the fourth SRO working out? How's she fitting in?
She's been great. I think for two particular reasons, I think the connection that she has made with particular students, I think particularly young Latino women, has been a great addition to our school staff in a way that there's a kind of an identity connection there that helps kids connect. And I think that's been very impactful. I think not only just seeing students being able to see themselves in someone in that role, but also just the relationships and the connection there. So she's been an awesome team member to have on board.
We're also trying to add 2 or 3 more officers to the school staff here to assist on a fill-in. Sergeant Nicola has been involved with Cap and O'Hara, trying to, select some more officers that come into the school so they can be replacements and fill-ins when someone's out or there's training issues or stuff like that. So we continue to have a presence.
Yeah, I know there were 3 who were interested and I was supposed to send an email and we never got to that, but do you think we could send the 3 of them to that training school?
They approved 2 are going, 1 already has it.
Oh, good,
So
okay,
that's
great.
gonna be revisited for like an update for some of the requirements by the state now that he didn't have in the past, they might have now, but at least 2 are scheduled to go to the 40-hour class in February
Awesome.
as alternates
Yeah,
in case
Thank you.
for unforeseen. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Dr. Kelly, any feedback from the state with respect to our disciplinary actions?
not yet. That'll come at the end of the year when they, when we submit this data, that's when they'll look at the summary of the year data and we will most definitely get whacked for excessive suspensions, but I think one of the things that can be a challenge with the state is they're very, and I don't mean to be overly critical, but they're very black and white with the data. They literally just look at the data. They don't consider the context behind it. And I think that in our context, the high number of suspensions we did after those 2 incidents at the beginning of the year are what has turned around the culture of the building. And even though the state can just say that they literally want suspensions to be kept low, there are contexts when we have to think differently about that.
No,
And
absolutely.
I would stand behind that 100%.
Yeah, good.
So we might get a little ding on that, but as long as we anticipate it,
Mhm.
we'll be okay.
One thing I will say, till we get on to 2025. A couple other communities have reached out to me and they're basically saying, what are you guys doing right? Because we still have problems. So other communities are seeing it. And so that's a good thing.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I think it's one of the places where the state needs to revisit the laws. Because it really has been difficult for us in the last few years to set any kind of a tone in terms of expectations of behavior. Because the law says that you have to try these different interventions before you can suspend. And even in this case that we had at the beginning of the year, many of the kids involved had been in incidents last year. It was the same kids.
Mm.
So we had done alternative interventions, which enabled us to go straight to suspension this year. But I think that's a place where, when I think about other communities, the point you were just making, Anthony, they're a little bit handcuffed by the state laws if they're not able to respond in ways that we understand to be appropriate. Yeah, by all means, go after districts that are showing racism in their data.
Mhm.
But if what you're doing is disciplining kids for actual misbehavior that places staff or other students in danger, we should be empowered to make those decisions on our own. And that's, something I'm pushing at the state level, but needs more consideration.
So repeal that, 37H
Yes.
3/4.
Yeah,
Excellent.
May I make a comment on?
Please.
On that, I think another thing that we have done, and through the support you've given the building in terms of positions that we have. The incident at the beginning of the year and the response that we had, I think kind of put a pause or a freeze on it. It definitely was a dramatic calm down after that. Which I think gave a lot of time for the many staff members that we have in different roles doing long, challenging work with kids who need more
Right.
support to kind of get to know a new tier of students. I don't know if that makes sense. It's not that students who were involved in this incident were unknown. We very much knew them and spent a lot of time working with them in the past. I think the freeze, so to speak, that happened after that initial incident kind of allowed us to sort of plant our roots in a different group of students.
Mhm.
And we had the staff to do that. And
Yeah.
when I talk to my colleagues in administrative roles or leadership roles in other districts and see the support structure that we have here and compared to what they, like, there's a jealousy that they have. And I think it's not just the response at the beginning of the year. I think that had an
Mm.
impact on the freeze. I'll use that word. I think what we were allowed to do because of the staff that we have through the funding that was received and the structure that we have here was to take advantage of that freeze to sort of do deeper roots into a different tier of students who were still in conflict, but perhaps maybe ones we weren't getting to as thoroughly because of maybe more significant situations.
I just want to make sure I understand
Sure,
what you're
sure.
saying.
yeah.
So are you saying that there was a lot of time spent on, we'll say a group of kids that were maybe involved in the altercations that occurred in the beginning of the year, and so they've now been removed, those resources can be
Yeah, and we have a lot
provided
of,
to
and we
other
have a lot of
students who
those
haven't met
resources.
that
Yeah.
level yet, but
Right,
Okay.
and we
We're
have a lot
headed
of
in
those
that
resources.
Alright.
direction and
Alright,
could be
gotcha.
headed off, all of those kids had. I'll say periphery friends who are on the periphery of those incidences who didn't get the same level of attention, but now because. The resources are there with the student support specialists and the student engagement coordinators and the house structure and the way you've staffed up the high school to give that. Now they can catch those kids before they go in that direction.
well, and I'm sure seeing what happened to their parents would
Exactly.
impact
Yeah.
their decisions as well.
Agreed.
Okay. Funny. John,
I just had a question. I guess we don't use in-school suspension. Is that something maybe we should look at?
In-school suspension is now illegal.
Okay, I didn't know that. It was on the chart, that's why.
Yeah.
It was, that first year it was
No, no, it's
around.
fine.
And then it wasn't.
Yeah,
No, that's fine. I
yeah.
just didn't know. Yeah, okay.
anything else on 2024? Anybody have more questions?
No, sir.
Can we start with the SRO deployment of 2025 and then go to the chief?
Yeah, I think you alluded to it. The chief and I have had conversations about this and we've spoken in our regular safety meetings with Dr. Bellucci. The SROs have articulated that they think it's time that we're in a position where Officer Brennis and Sergeant Intern Nicola can return to their regular positions at the West Revere and the Garfield. And I know Mr. Kingston articulated that he's heard from community members who are anxious for that to happen. Chief, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that. I think you kind of weighed in before, but
Yeah, we can try to adjust where they're spending their time and they can return back to their original assignments. And I know there's a big demand for Charlie.
that's right.
Everyone looks for Charlie and Officer Brennis, but. Yeah, no, absolutely, we can adjust that.
Yeah, and we'll still have Officer Singer and Officer
Julie's.
Ulysses up here at the high school on a daily basis, so they'll both still be here.
Okay,
Dr. Can I ask a question regarding that? So if that happens, it will be full-time all at once, it will be progressive, right, or?
I think we were thinking
Yeah, they just go back.
that they would go back, but
Yeah.
they all have their vehicles, they all go everywhere, all over the
Yeah,
city
okay.
anyway. So if anything were to happen, or until we have these three other trained substitute SROs. If Officer Singer was gonna be out, it's been our routine that one of them would come and work out of this building for the day. So we do that routinely anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's gonna work out.
I think we're
The
ready.
Officers will transition them in, they'll get familiarized with the different schools.
Yeah.
And I think we'll be able to, use them.
That's
in a-
great.
An effective way. in the Schools.
That'll be a good next step for us, is to start bringing them in to just see the role. And one of the things that we had talked about at our safety meeting was just bringing them in with the SROs and have let's talk to each other and help you understand a little bit of what this job is like. Cause there's some parts of it that are great, but there's some parts of it that these guys will tell you are exhausting and taxing and emotional. And all of those different things, and we need, I think the key thing, and we've been very fortunate in the Revere Public Schools, is that we have SROs who can understand and meet kids where they are. It's not the same as every other kind of police work that police officers do. It's a little bit different, and so it takes a unique personality to be able to mediate that. It's kind of the same thing I say about teachers. You gotta have a thick skin, because sometimes kids can act out. Yeah, right. All of you who are parents, I'm sure have witnessed your own children in moments that you wished you could have avoided, and that's what teachers and others deal with all day long, every day, so.
Before we close out, before I send you, any other question?
I'm sorry, so when will I see Brian at the wheel, honestly? I have parents on a daily basis berating me. Monday?
Well, I think we could probably see him, Monday at the latest.
Okay,
Yeah.
We
I'm
can
sorry, it's just so
transition.
that I can say something, cause. I thought that after the break that would happen, and then I got some, it's hard when someone's asking you a question and you try to give them an answer as honest as you can. And, I didn't say anything set in stone, I said I hope for this, but then you kind of lose a little credibility, when you say something, even if I try to be as put as many, words that, I can't control the situation, so I say, I hope that he'll be back there when school resumes after the holiday break, but then it's almost a month later, so that's why, at least if someone reaches out the next day or so, I can say, he's expected to be there on Monday.
I think one of the things that was important was that we took the time to actually have a meeting like this and think it through and talk, and maybe Anthony, before we wrap up, can I just run through quickly what's going forward with the guideposts?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep.
I won't spend a lot of time on this, you can all look at it, but as we've been talking about in our safety protocols for the last couple of months, we have engaged a company called Guidepost to do an audit of our safety and security systems throughout the district. And there are three main pieces that they're gonna look at. If you look at the graphic on that first page, it talks about the holistic project approach. And they wanna look at the physical, the operational, and the technology. So they're gonna look at all three of those aspects of what we have in place. And then identify areas and give us suggestions on ways that we could do better. So the first is a security assessment, and you can read through the description here, but they're gonna look at our written documents, but also go around, visit all of the schools and see what security protocols are in place and whether or not they're working. We do drills like that with the police department all the time anyway, where they go and tug on doors to make sure they're actually locked when nobody knows that they're coming, and pieces like that. So, but this will be, it's good to have a second set of eyes on all of that work. And then if you flip it over, the second step is the safety and security plan review. That's where they're gonna go through all of our documents, which I think are in pretty good shape. They meet the state requirements. We have to submit them to DESE each year anyway. We work with our police and fire on those plans as well. And they give us sign off before we submit them. But it'll be good to have a second set of eyes on those. And then the training program, they're gonna talk to us. We've already shared with them that we are fortunate to have Sergeant Turner, is it Sergeant, right?
Yeah.
Who works with us and is actually a national expert on these kinds of drills. But they're gonna take a look at some of our protocols and then relay for us things that might be happening in other parts of the country. Some of their staff are former FBI agents, so they have some information on that piece. It's not about them coming in to just say to us, you should do X, Y, and Z. It's about them coming in and looking at what we do and then focusing on, you're doing great on X and you're doing great on Y, but here's where we see you can strengthen Z. And so we're excited for this partnership. Dr. Galucci and I are gonna be meeting with them on Monday to start to set out a calendar for school visits, and all of those pieces. And I think that's an important next step. And again, I want to emphasize that's for the whole district, not just for the high school. And we're also going to talk to them about engaging with us when it comes time to look at the safety plans for the new building as we do the design process, so that we can make sure that we're forward thinking on all of that. We do have a safety consultant who works through our building designer, Perkins Eastman, so they will be weighing in, but again, it's always good to have a second set of eyes to look at that plan. So I just wanted to share that and make sure everybody's aware of it.
That's great.
One thing I'll add with that Guidepost, even though it's a global company, they have a separate division just for schools. So I think they've done the Andover schools, they've done a number of schools, so it's not something, a security company is just coming in from the private sector who's never had an experience in the schools. They do a lot of experience, they do a lot of business with the schools. So, and a part of, I think one of the divisions is behavioral analysis also, so that's part of it also. So, I'm looking forward to see what their findings are.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? Anybody?
I'll just say, no, Dr. Kelly, it's very good that you and the school committee are having like an outside firm come in, totally impartial. No connections with anybody. They can come in and give an honest assessment. And not that anybody would not give an honest assessment, but they don't know anybody. They're not
Yeah.
connected to the school department. They'll come in and go through all the buildings. And
Yeah.
that's a very good thing to do.
Due diligence.
It is, and I also think that we all get tunnel vision and we see what we want to see, not what's really there. So it's good to have that outside lens.
They're gonna see the whole field and they're gonna do a good assessment. And they'll absolutely do their due diligence.
Yeah.
Like I just mentioned, and I think it'll be a very good thing. And they'll be able to tighten up some areas that may need to be adjusted. No, it's excellent.
And one thing, you have any other question? I just want to say one thing before we close. I just want to thank my committee members, the police, fire, the administration, the mayor's office, because we could make all these policies, but if we don't have a group effort to work together, we're not going to get this job done. So I want to thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.